Good morning. Thank you very much for the words of introduction, and thanks very much for having me. So I'm used to classrooms, but not that big. You mentioned botnets, and I worked for some years on a number of them, just like the guy you mentioned. And actually, one of the theories I was defending is that all malware are sort of botnets, are communicating, and that's part of what we are faced with. Tools developed by the bad guys that communicate, and we need to fight against them. That's the evolution over the past 10 years. But let's look a bit further into the past and into what we have encountered and how we've come to the situation today. Well, you mentioned who I am. Maybe to underline something, I've had the luck in the Gendarmerie to train more, and that's something very important. So over the years, they gave me the chance to train on cybersecurity at the beginning, forensics, of course, but that was by practice. Then I had the chance to do, with the support of my agency, a PhD on the topic of botnets, and that's very important. We need to keep learning, training, and listening to what the others are saying about stuff, and reading a lot, exchanging a lot, so that's very important. But let's look at how cybercrime has evolved over the past 20 and more years. It's moving a lot, but not very fast. So there's a number of trends that we see evolving very slowly. Over the time, we see things appearing. So for instance, when the internet showed up for the general people in the 90s, 95, something around that, we had abuse from the beginning, and one of the first topics of abuse was child abuse online. As soon as they noticed that they could exchange pictures, that nobody would see what they were doing, they started sharing pictures of victims. And then further down the line, when it became easier to discuss live, they started trying to contact those children, and so on. There's an evolution. And for each type of object, of topic that could be impacted, there's been an evolution over the time. For instance, if you look at smart cards, credit cards, we had fraud evolving from basic copying of magnetic stripes, then copying of chip cards, and then an evolution in the equipment that was used to copy them. And for instance, at the beginning of the years 2000, they were using encryption on the copying devices, so we had to attack the encryption of those devices. You mentioned organized crime. We see normal forms of organized crimes interested in cybercrime. Very recently, they noticed that it was possible to get a lot of money from online markets, the carbon markets, but more in the past, they were stealing cars, and suddenly the car manufacturers, they made their cars safer, but they added more electronics, and they needed electronic specialists to attack the cars and steal the cars. So we saw at the beginning of the years 2000, car theft being enabled by electronics. So they recruited electronics people, they trained them, and they got more and more involved into this field. So a lot of potential targets, many evolutions over the time, but at the same time, we needed to adapt. So for instance, I mentioned child abuse. That was our first motivation to do forensics at that time. We had more and more cases with child abuse images on computers, and we train more people investigating those crimes online, but looking inside the computers of the suspects. And I'll get more into that. I'll give another example. If you look at the malware field, of course, we've always had ransomware, for instance. We talk a lot about ransomware since 2013, 2012, but actually, if you look more in the past, there were a number of ransomware already targeting mobile phones at that time, traveling over Bluetooth between mobile phones. So things appear and then reappear and then become more and more important for the bad guys because there's more opportunity to make money, more opportunity to get data from them, and that's what we've lived over the time. I'll talk about AI at the end of my talk. Of course, it's a cybersecurity talk, but they're always looking at the new stuff. So anything that's new is going to be targeted, and that's also a trend over the past years. So opportunities, new objects, evolution of technologies, and the bad guys adapt, so we need to adapt. If you look at the different years that are important to us, in the years 1990, we had European working groups on cybercrime at Interpol first, then at Europol, the Council of Europe Convention, and what was important about that convention is that it reached out to other countries to develop their capacity with a number of programs to train law enforcement. An important date to remember is the creation of EC3 at Europol in 2013. That changed a lot. It changed a lot in our response. It changed a lot in the way we were attacking those threats. And for us, it's a grounds for better solutions for the future. We've evolved over the time, and I'll give you a picture of what we've done in the Gendarmerie. So this is a complex chart, but what is important is that we've been training people more and more and more. First to do forensics, as I mentioned, in the years 2000, we started training forensic specialists. We had first 10, then 20, then 50. Today, we have over 400 forensic specialists all over the country. We also trained first responders, people on the ground, working directly with the victims, receiving complaints, doing basic forensics at their level. So that started in 2008, for instance. And today, we have 10,000 cybercrime specialists all over the country in the Gendarmerie. In the police, which is another law enforcement force, they do the same thing. So we need to train a lot of people. So that means a lot of investment in people, but it also means a lot of investment from the people. They keep training themselves, they keep exchanging, they come back to the classroom. And for instance, in 2019, we created a training on cryptocurrency investigations. So training in people, equipping them, changing the laws. So for instance, in 2007, we asked for a piece of legislation to allow us to go online using a pseudonym. And that was very important. We needed the same type of tools that the bad guys were using. So go online, chat with supposedly bad guys, and try and collect evidence of their crimes. And we had the first trainings in 2011, first on child abuse cases, and then in other types of crimes, drug trafficking and so on online. That was very important for us. Of course, the units changed. When I started, we just had a forensic lab. Then we had an internet watch team, a cybercrime division, a bigger team that had actually investigative powers that could arrest people. following their investigations. We created regional units in 2013, 15, and now it's up to the Cyber Command of the Ministry of Interior to coordinate all of that. So evolutions in the organizations, that's not very important, but actually it structures things, makes you have a better focus and look at the strategy over the time. Just to mention a few things, in 2010, I was fighting for a budget. I was asking for 1.5 million euros to renew the equipment of all the people on the ground. And I had a computer guy in front of me. He was in charge of computers in the Gendarmerie, and he told me, yeah, your internet, cybercrime, it's not going to last. So you don't need that money. I was taking money from them, so yeah, it's been a fight over the years to demonstrate that we needed to work on that we needed to invest in that, and it's been quite a journey. So what are we looking at today? You know most of that, but just pointing at a few facts. We're not looking at typical organized crime. So with organized crime is like the mafia, you know, the big boss at the top and a hierarchy. Today it's more of an ecosystem. So many different people offering many different cybercriminal activities, products, services to each other. They're on platforms, they communicate. I mentioned some of them, but those are just examples, like Telegram and other underground markets and so on. It's transnational. For us, that's very important. I mentioned 2013 for the evolution of Europol. We need transnational solutions to those types of crimes as well. Then a more recent evolution, they took up cryptocurrencies as a tool. That's in most of our investigations, we find cryptocurrencies, we need to investigate them. And actually, cryptocurrencies are a form of platform for the bad guys. So ecosystems, platforms, across borders, cryptocurrencies, and that keeps moving all the time. So the botnet you were mentioning, first level, second level, that's changing over the time. The team behind it, it's 5 guys, 10 guys, but they recruit new people, people leave. They're using infrastructure. 1 week they're using servers there. The following week they're using servers elsewhere. They're moving their infrastructure. So when you look at it, it's already changing. And that's very important to understand. So the time of the typical investigation, when you look at traces, it's always traces from the past. And we need to look at a moving target. So that's what makes things very special in the cybercrime environment. So it's moving all the time, the people, the infrastructure, the tools they use. Of course, there's trends, but for specific investigations, we need to look at it as a movie. It's evolving over the time. So when we want to address that, how do we organize? Today, that's what's going on. It's teams coordinating, planning for a number of years. So maybe you've heard about the Impact program at Europol that's looking at organized crime in different fields, including cybercrime, including crimes against children online, including fraud online. Those 3 topics, we try to have a common strategy together in terms of training, in terms of prevention, and in terms of targeting organized crime groups. One other team at Europol that's looking at those groups is JCAT. That's a coordination team from different countries that look at data, and I'll talk a lot about data today. Look at data together and say, okay, these are the guys we need to be looking at. this is the investigation we need to open together quickly. This is what we should be doing. So planning and coordination of the teams. Joint investigation teams, that's an important tool. It's a legal tool in Europe, but actually it's open to partner countries. That allows to open investigations between countries. So you have prosecutors in one country and in another that decide, okay, that's a transnational crime situation. We can open a case, and your investigators can share information live together at the same time, work on the same case, and that's been a game changer for us. So not only can they sit around a table, they can actually investigate in the separate countries and share intelligence live on their cases around that joint investigation. For cybercrime, that has been a game changer. Of course, there's also cooperation with others, cyber industry, academia. I'm going to mention a number of examples. But in most of the cases today, there's some form of cooperation with outside people, outside from law enforcement, mostly industry, so people like you. And that's made things possible at another level, at another stage, because of the information you have, because of the insights you have, but also because of the willing you have to find solutions to protect your customers, to protect the people, and so on. So it's made things very different. In the middle, it's a lot about sharing data. So that's difficult on a legal basis. It's also difficult for some people because they want to keep their data. They don't want to show it. It's my data. It has a value, of course. And then we started to work more on that. One of the aspects is the joint investigation teams. Legally, we can share data. We can do house search in the morning, house search even inside a server farm, and copy the servers and share the copies of the servers with all the other teams in the joint investigation team. So that's possible today. Analyze the data together. And if you look at data with different eyes from different countries, you go faster in understanding how it works. So actually, the people collecting the data might be very different from the people analyzing it, might be from a different country, and so on. And so that's what makes investigations possible. Last aspect of building cases together is testing new strategies. I'll give a number of examples, but we're testing new strategies against cybercrime all the time. If you just look at the picture in 2024 of what was announced by Europol in terms of cases, that's public on their website, a number of operations, Cryptojacker in January, Juicy Fields in April, Kronos against Lockbit in February and May and October as well, Anonymous Sudan, De-anonymized, and so on. All of those different cases, they were built thanks to those tools, thanks to those strategies. What is common with all those cases? In most of the situations, it's a long-run investigation, 2 to 3 years before you get to an actual arrest. So 2 to 3 years, it's long, but at the same time, it's very short compared to the situation because of the difficulty of the cases, because of the need to cross borders, to find cooperation with different actors and so on. But once you decide, it's very efficient. Data is key. I already mentioned it. And you find industry cooperation in most of those cases. So if you look on the Europol website, you'll see industry there, and there. For instance, in June, Morpheus against Cobalt Strike abusers, there was a number of industries involved from the beginning. of course, the company behind CobalStrike, but also others looking at it from different angles, providing intelligence that allowed law enforcement to close a number of accounts and actually identify a number of suspect users of CobalStrike. Long-run investigations, data, industry cooperation. So for instance, Logbit, maybe some of you saw the presentation by Paul Alexandre earlier this week, Paul Alexandre Gillot on Operation Kronos. Logbit appeared in 2019, and it was very quickly identified as a leader in ransomware. More than 2,000 victims worldwide, 130 million euros ransom collected. So it's a big actor. Not that big in terms of the size of the original team, but actually it had gathered a lot of associates, affiliates who were working with him or with them, and it made a great lot of damage. So in 2021, law enforcement identified Logbit as an important target. And in 2023, we had the first arrests by France, with the USA, with Europol. First suspects, affiliates, and we started gathering more intelligence. And that led to Operation Kronos in 2024 with a number of stages. And if you look at the description of the stages, you will find some of the new strategies that law enforcement is using. So they took over the website on Tor that was used by Logbit to publish in the same form as Logbit was publishing information about the investigation. So to mean we got you, and we got information about you, and this is what we have. We have ways to decrypt. We have lists of names, lists of suspects being affiliates, and we're going after you. And these are all the countries that work together to identify you. A few months later, that guy was identified as Logbit Sup, and his name was published, picture was published, and so on. And it goes on. The investigation is not finished because there's a lot of people behind it. Of course, the guy hasn't been arrested yet, but he will be arrested somewhere. If he goes have some sun on the Riviera or somewhere, he might have some trouble. They're going to be replaced, and there are going to be new actors who are going to have to go after them, but it's not lost. We've gotten more efficient on those types of cases, and it's going in the right direction. So what else can be done? We need to share more data between each of us. We need to be able, from law enforcement, to share data with the private sector, and that's something we're working on. We need to develop new strategies. We need to be more proactive and anticipate. Very often, law enforcement waits for crimes to be reported and then investigates. We need to look at crime online, identify infrastructure that is being set up, look at information that comes from the private sector, and attack it at the beginning or as early as possible. That's not easy. I'll give an example. We also need to develop new technical approaches. We've been developing new approaches that include entering the networks of the bad guys, dismantling their infrastructure remotely. For that, sometimes we need more legal tools to allow that. So we're working on that, but there's been a lot of progress. So just a few examples. 2019, in March 2019, we had a notification by Avast about Retadup. So it was a botnet targeting Peru, We don't know why. And actually, more than half of the targets from that botnet were in Peru. More than 500,000 abused computers. Advised in March, we investigated technically with Avast. In July 2019, we launched the operation to take down the botnet. Why did they come to us? They came to French law enforcement because we had the servers in the country. So the command and control servers that you were mentioning. And we had close to no victims in France. So it was a case where we had no victims, but we had a server in France, and we said, okay, we'll go talk to the judge and tell him we have no victims, but we're going to investigate still. And that worked. He was convinced. With Avast, we developed a solution to deinstall the malware, which was possible in this case, because it would not damage the computers of the victims. And 1.3 million bots were deactivated, and a little bit more in a few weeks. So that's quite simple, actually. One company, one law enforcement agency, servers in one country, a judge that is willing to do it, technical possibilities in this case, and we went for it. So we can be proactive about a crime. Of course, it was already ongoing for some time, a few months, but that was efficient. We need to improve the way we exchange data, we collect data from the victims. So if you wait for complaints from the victims, it's not going to work. But it is still useful, face-to-face complaints. Of course, in child abuse cases, it's important that abused victims come to us and be able to file a complaint. But for everyday cybercrime, that's not very efficient. There's hundreds of thousands of victims every year in each country. They're not going to come to police stations and report, I have a malware on my computer, on my mobile phone, and so on. They usually uninstall it, repair it with the tools provided by security providers, but they don't file a complaint. We need that information. In 2018 and 2020, in France, we created two platforms, one to report credit card fraud, a second one to report online fraud. So Perceval, the credit card fraud one, before that platform, we had 12,000 open cases every year. After the creation of the platform, we had more than 200,000 reports every year of victims. And what's important from those reports is the information they provide. So they provide details about how they got attacked, how they got their credit card compromised, and how we can investigate it by crossing information between all those cases. So that's made us do a lot of progress, and we're more proactive on credit card fraud today. Why are we doing that? It's because the banks themselves, they don't have the information. They don't have all the details from the victims. So we needed to receive the complaints. It's the same with online fraud, same mechanism, victims from scams online, and they're reporting more and more crimes. There's other methods, like joint collection of reports with Cybercrime. I'll mention that just after. And working with the industry, we've joined the Intercert in France. So 2 law enforcement agencies have certs, and they're part of the Intercert in France. There's over 100 certs, and they're exchanging information every day online. And that's getting momentum, and it's starting to give a number of results. So just looking at Cybercrime, so Cybercrime is a not-for-profit that was created in 2007. And at first, it looked at spam, looked at reports from the people. Reports were collected through email, and it was spam email at the time. And we quickly identified that it was not sufficient. We needed the full headers of the emails. So we devised a plugin inside software, inside web browsers, inside inside email software to allow us to collect the full headers and the full email. And then we started having users collecting that information for us. So spam, there's commercial spam, and of course there's abusive spam, and there's criminal spam. And to find a solution to spam, you need to look at that information and see what marketing campaigns are abusing, and the email service providers need to take action against them, talk with their customers and say, okay, you've been sending too much of those commercial messages, or too much to people who have not accepted, so we're going to close your account, or you have to take measures, etc. And then law enforcement as well could do investigations. And for instance, very recently we had a presentation by the market overviewing agency in charge of investment markets that is looking at the same data. And it has opened 100 investigations just last year based on the information collected from the victims of spam. So it's ISPs, hosting providers, email service providers, brands, law enforcement, other authorities, and cybersecurity companies looking at the same data, collecting data directly from the victims of a very tricky object that is spam, and trying to, each of them, play a role and limit the damage of those messages. Tomorrow we'll be looking at spam through SMS messages that are already being collected from the public. There's a lot of work there. So it started in 2007, and we started having results in 2014, 15, and now it's quite mature. And it's a model that is working pretty well, and it's all funded by the private sector. Private sector coming together. There's about 100 member companies, and they really find it important for them to work together against those abuses. Networking. We need to exchange with more and more people, of course. I mentioned industry a lot. We also work with research organizations. So my office is located at the Cyber Campus. Some of our teams are there. Our CSERT is there. And in that building, you have a number of companies, a number of schools, and also a number of research projects going on, or research people coming regularly to exchange with us. So there's many different projects. I'll quote one of them. It's called DefMal. It's actually a network of laboratories all over the countries working on malware and developing new approaches to investigating malware from a research point of view, but actually discussing with law enforcement on how to deal with it. There's a number of research chairs. For those of you who were here yesterday morning, Frédéric Douzet is from Géode, looking at geostrategy of cybercrime, cyber defense, and so on. But there's other teams in the country, and we need to be involved with all of them. There's a number of not-for-profit organizations and clubs. We also get involved in them. I mentioned SINA-SPAM, but there's also a club of CISOs that's called Cézanne, etc. So for us, getting in touch with all those people, developing projects with them is very important. I'll mention the 2 conferences that were created in France. Corinne, if there's no French people in the room, you might not know of it. It's a meeting of digital investigators and incident response specialists that gathers every year, about 500 of them, and exchange on their daily work. And it's been pretty efficient. And BotConf, which is an international conference on botnets and malware ecosystems that we've been running for the past 12 years as well. So that ecosystem, that network is very important to us, and we keep developing it. So a few prospective topics to conclude. Of course, we need to talk about artificial intelligence. It is being abused today by criminals. So there was the example of WormGPT. Avast, sorry, I'm mentioning Avast again. Avast has published information about LoveGPT. It's an interface that has been developed by guys to help in scams online, targeting people in love scams, and to facilitate the creation of profiles, the management of profiles, and the automation of text exchanges with the victims. So instead of having one guy talking with one victim, you could have one guy talking with 10, 20 victims, changing profiles from victim to victim, and coordinating that, and all helped by artificial intelligence. And that is going to create a lot of damage because it's going to explode the number of victims. Disinformation, that's a tricky topic. Of course, we don't want to address free speech, but some disinformation is manipulating people into not getting vaccine, for instance, in France, and that's dangerous, but into fraud schemes and stirring unrest and so on. So we're developing a number of strategies very carefully, but we need to be looking at that. And we're working closely with a new agency that was created 2 years ago, Viginum, who is looking at foreign interference through social networks. And they've made a lot of progress in identifying a number of operations against our elections, against the Olympic Games, and so on. So we'll be working on that. So those are the two topics for the future. So some key takeaways from what I mentioned. We need to be persistent, patient. Takes time to set up teams, to train them. They need to invest in their training. We need to adapt and innovate all the time. Every year there's a new problem. We need to change our organization very often. We need to look at what is going on. So we need to look in the past, learn from the lessons of the past. We need to look around, look at what's happening in other countries, and that has taught us a lot over the past years. And of course, we need to look ahead at what could be the future in terms of crimes, in terms of future targets. Everything that is new, I mentioned, is going to be a target online. Every new service, every new product. So we need to look at that. And we need to build trust and to cooperate, especially with the industry. So if you have something to propose, you'll always find an ear in law enforcement in your countries. And we're ready to listen and work on those cases together. It's not perfect, but it's working. Thank you very much.
Got time for Q&A. You have time for Q&A.
Yes. So normally I have 1 minute and so for questions, but maybe a bit more. But
We've got about 10, I think.
1 minute.
Oh, for.
So does anyone have a question? Please come to the mics if you have a question. And I'll stay a bit after.
Hello, sir. It was a nice talk. The question I am having is a bit tricky. So when we talk about data, you talk a lot about data being important part of investigation and things around it. So as a law enforcement or being part of a law enforcement, we often need several personal data or a data that is very much important to solve a case. And as a public or someone, as a common public, if we complain financial fraud, we often think that I should get my money back as a person complaining to be able to create that trust. But when we think from a perspective of private sector companies, so they are abided by rules and regulations. So, what are the methods that you should think should be implemented in order to bridge that gap between public and private sectors.
So I'm not sure I understood everything because it's difficult to hear. But first on motivation of the company to share data, to protect your customers, you need to find solutions to their problems, and working with law enforcement is going to solve some of those problems. So it's actually positive for the company, so it adds value to the data. If the data is sitting there and not being used, not being investigated upon, it's not useful, so you're losing money and so on. In terms of regulations, I mentioned a number of regulations that are open to us, and actually Europol, for instance, has a specific regulation that allows them to take directly data from the industry, look at it and share it with law enforcement all over Europe. And for instance, in CIASPAM, we set up the program with our data protection agency, personal data protection agency, and it allows us to share that data under their supervision. So yes, you need to solve a number of issues, but it's mostly about finding a solution to what people are actually suffering from. So we need to use that data.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you. And please speak.
How are you doing? You're right. So my question is specifically addressing one part of your presentation about AI. You mentioned WorldGPT and other services. And myself, I'm developing like small language models, and I'm just curious, how can you address when someone can locally train and self-host an AI that can do that stuff? Because the WorldGPT obviously can be even a honeypot eventually, but when it's self-hosted, probably the law enforcement never going to see.
Mm. And actually, decentralization is an issue as well with social networks that are moving in that direction, and we need to look at, but it's another topic. The larger availability of tools is an issue, and so it's going to be a lot about training law enforcement all over Europe and the world to address that. It's going to be about prevention messages that we send to the people. I didn't go into the details about the proactive measures that law enforcement is taking, but part of it is about identifying what younger guys or older guys or girls actually are doing bad, and telling them, you shouldn't do that. Law enforcement in the UK is knocking on doors of suspects and handing them letters and telling them, well, you shouldn't be doing that. We've noticed. Please be careful. That's one solution. So that's why we need to train a lot of law enforcement all over the country to be able to deal with very local bad, not bad actors, but people who are going in the wrong direction, and talk with them, interrogate them, and maybe find solutions. We need to talk about that in schools. In case it gets worse, so more and more people using that, it's about us finding the platforms where they are getting trained, where they get their information, and taking them down. So there's many ways to address that, but it's not very new. I mean, what Jeff mentioned earlier about him learning, you learn to do bad stuff. I was wondering if I had to arrest him somehow. It's not very new that a lot of people are learning to do bad stuff. They're testing. It's more about the message we give to the people, the prevention message, and what young people are taught in schools than about arresting everyone. That's not going to solve anything.
Yeah, just to make it clear that when I have high quality hacking data,
Okay.
I can train my own local language model without any skills to be able to get into certain systems. So and it's self-hosted at home, so nobody can know about that it's running and it's been trained and been used. So that was the question, how can the law enforcement address that?
So, but you're not going to attack anyone?
I'm not. Well, I heard someone who might be, so.
I'm sure you.
For a friend. So.
If you're not doing in the end anything bad, it's not a problem. There's going to be a trace somewhere. If you're preparing to commit an offense, that's an offense in France. So if you're doing acts to prepare to commit an offense, so we could investigate in such a case. So we have legal tools. Then how to detect that? You're going to talk about it, like today. You're going to talk about it somewhere. So it leaves traces somewhere. And you're going to test it. You're going to want to test it. So it's going to show up somewhere. And maybe you're going to want to sell it to other people. So unless there's a start of use, we can't investigate. But once you start using it, we'll detect it. So that's why we need to train people to be able to deal with it. Did I answer your question?
I want to say no, but I'm a polite guy, so yes.
Okay, maybe we can talk after. Thank you.
Hello? Yeah. I have a question regarding regulation, especially regarding the cybersecurity regulation. So nowadays there are a lot of discussion going on that in Europe we have, is it too much cybersecurity regulation or too few? So what do you see, like compared to other parts of the world? And is it going in the right direction, the cybersecurity regulation?
So self-regulation is not working. Actually, it was mentioned. So we need to regulate somehow. And why do we need to regulate? Because the market itself needs common rules. Otherwise, there are some guys who are not going to follow any rules, who are going to sell cheaper. And so we need to have everybody at the same level of expenses in security. So that's why we need regulation. So the Cyber Resilience Act at the European level, and in UK there's an equivalent, that's necessary. But it's not against industry, it's to help the industry raise the bar higher and put everybody at the same level of expectation. So I believe it's necessary. And I've been fighting for that piece of legislation for the past 10 years, so I'm pretty happy that it's coming up. So yes, it's necessary. Yeah. And very quickly, because we don't have time, maybe I'm taking the two questions one after the other.
Hi, I'm Scott Constable with Intel Labs. Great talk. What can policymakers do to help society identify would-be cyber criminals before they start doing the criming to try to steer their talents and interests in a more productive direction so we don't have as many cyber criminals and as much cybercrime in the first place?
Yeah, and solve everything. Yeah, you need to reach out to people. So law enforcement is reaching out to younger crowds. Companies need to reach out inside classrooms. We need to go together inside classrooms and talk with the younger guys and girls and try and get them to know about it. You need direct connections. So we have, for instance, in France, we have local trained law enforcement who go into classrooms, talk about those issues, and we need to be doing more of that. Only law enforcement is doing it, or mostly law enforcement, or some not-for-profits. Industry needs to be doing more of that. So that's one answer. But we need to create more diversity in the ways we recruit people as well. Well, there's many challenges behind that. So yeah, if you want to talk about it, you're welcome. I'm sorry, I'm supposed to have lost all my time, so I can't take the questions, but I'll go talk with you if you want, okay? I need to go down. Thank you very much.